Hello, I'm John Lacey. I'm the director of the Global Mining Law Center at the University of Arizona's James E. Rogers College of Law. Uh, my guest today is Stan Dempsey. We both Stan and I have participated for a long time over in a group that's called the Society of Mining Law Antiquarians. One of our uh, areas of interest really is both the study of the derivation of mining laws, both in this country and others, but the focal point of a lot of our study has been the general mining law. It's called by many the mining law of 1872. In fact, it probably goes back many centuries and sometimes millennia before that. But in fact, the mining law of 1872 is probably a misnomer because even though it was the original version was enacted in 1872, it has been changed dramatically over the years. It is, in fact, a tenure law. If individuals want to obtain rights to develop minerals, they look to the general mining law as a basis for that tenure system. Both Stan and I have been active in the society for a long time, and I think we've both been presidents of the society and editors of our newsletter. But we find certain parallels of the mining law, and I know, Stan, you were mentioning to me the other day about some of the current developments that may impact our view of how the mining law works.
Well, as I told you, the folks in Silicon Valley that develop software now talk a lot about open source. I noticed that Apple just yesterday opened up one of their major softwares to open source development. When we talk about open source in the software area, we're talking about making the code available to everyone. Linux is one of the early softwares that is not proprietary. You don't have to buy a license. Wikipedia is another open source development where everybody can contribute and adjust things as they go. It's become a major topic in Silicon Valley. At Stanford and a number of other schools, people have been looking at open source as not only in the software area, but does it have something to do with governance of people, political governance? Should we have more openness in terms of making a decision on an impact statement or something like that? So a lot of scholars have been trying to find models. Let me go back just a second on the open source. There are a couple of ways to think about this being used beyond software. First, NASA has made the identification of asteroids, particularly the ones that might hit the Earth, as open source. They have put all of their information, all their computer data, online freely to anybody that wants to look at it, anywhere in the world. You and I could pull it up right now on our computers. And they've invited the public to say, have they identified a new asteroid out of this data? And secondly, what would we do about it if it's going to hit us, and how big is it? It's beyond imagination that the government would open up that kind of set of files, but they did. Secondly, a mine in Canada that our old friend Chuck Jeunesse is the CEO of, the Red Lake mine, published all of its data. It was running out of ore. And they published all their data on the vein system at Red Lake and said, whoever would like to come in with an idea on where to drill next, we don't know where to drill next. We'll listen to anybody. They put, and mining companies in the past were not too much on giving out all their data.
Were they giving any rewards for people that came up with good ideas?
They were. There was a reward for discovery, John. I think it was a $500,000 prize for the first prize. There were 2 or 3 prizes. In fact, they had 200 and some legitimate, when I say legitimate, really serious responses, one of which was done by an Australian firm, I believe in Perth, that was an oil reserve specialist. And they put in their ideas, and the first 5 that were drilled were in new ore bodies.
Really? I'll be darned.
And I mean, this is so contrary to the way we used to do things. It's obviously gotten my interest. So,
well, the parallel to the mining law would be the fact that the public is invited to explore the public domain of the United States, to find mineralization that could be mined, and with the idea that if you found something, it would be rewarded.
And it was good for the state, because these are minerals that would never have been found unless somebody worked hard to do it. And the elites may not have found it.
Yeah. Well, another factor, just recently, the laws that were passed concerning space transportation suggest that if you were able to land on an asteroid, the ability to exploit the mineral resources of that asteroid would belong to the person that was capable of doing it.
Right, the reward for discovery.
Yeah, and very much parallel to the general mining law.
Right, and that heritage all through time. I mean, we've self-initiated rights and the freedom of everybody to go into the field has been a pretty good major policy driver for mining law all through history. But people in Silicon Valley were looking for some examples. They kept saying, this goes way beyond just software. This goes into, can we do things like that I've just described for those 2 examples? So the scholars went into the Bancroft Library and other libraries of Huntington and pulled out the diaries from the 49ers. They really did the first original research that's been done in many years on the California gold rush. And as you know, John, at the time, it was just at the time of statehood. The state was not established yet.
Yeah, it was really it was even before the end of the Mexican War when the discovery of gold came in.
Right, and there was no state law, there was no federal law, so the miners made their own law. And the question is that a pretty good example of open source lawmaking? And that was the thing that the scholars wanted to test. And I think there are 10 or 15 wonderful papers. One is by a man named Libicap. There are several others by well thought of scholars that say, yes, it was a pretty good way to look at it. People did make their own laws. The laws did work. They provided a basis for tenure, and they also provided even criminal law and things like that. But to our particular point, they really found that the primary evidence in those diaries and things like that, and in the laws themselves that have mostly been preserved, tell the story that was really an example of open source where everybody in the camp had something to say.
Has that study been published? Is that a fairly recent study that was done?
Yes, there are 8 or 10 papers. I think the one I enjoyed the most, though, was one that was submitted to the Supreme Court as part of one of their writing contests that reckoned that taco trucks in Los Angeles were a pretty good model of self-initiated rights and holding by doing. And the taco trucks would run into problems with the finding a place to park because the main brick and mortar restaurants didn't want them anywhere near them.
Uh-huh.
So they'd go out in Walmart's shopping center parking lot and have open meetings like the old miners.
Uh-huh.
So this student used the mining law as an parallel to what was being done by the taco people.
Interesting.
But no, there are a number of serious papers have been written on this subject, and very much of interest to me and to you.
Well, good, and I think that this really demonstrates the lasting power of the type of laws that we've seen with the general mining law.
Well, and I would just go back for a second too. This reward for discovery, the use it or lose it principles that we still have in the law, do have modern application as a policy matter. And as you say, the mining laws are tenure laws. They're not intended to be environmental laws. You wouldn't want to put environmental features in a tenure law because tenure is a very conservative sort of thing. You can't build a nation and build big buildings with a law that changes every month. And you want your environmental law to change from time to time as we learn more about the technology. But the financial people are not going to want to change the terms and conditions of your tenure every time you want to change the environmental law. So the tenure laws should be conservative, and they are.
Yeah.
Now, I would go just a little bit further and say that these studies are really worth looking at very broadly.
Good. Well, thank you, Stan, and we appreciate your views on the tenure aspects of the general mining law. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, John.